Tyler Davey. I'm CEO of Alchemist North America. With me at the back is Harish Pandian. He is our head of product for EHSQ. We are a software company that specializes in health and safety software for companies around the world. We have a little over 50,000 customers. And today we're going to talk a lot about contractor management and managing your pre-qualification within your contractors. Alchemist has been around for about 42 years, so we like to think we've been doing this for a while. Obviously not all in software. 42 years ago we weren't dealing digitally. We were dealing with pen and paper, and we were going and dealing with chemicals, hazardous waste, hazardous materials, and making sure people were safe from there. So we have a very strong pedigree around safety and safety management. And over the better part of the last 12 years, we've transformed ourselves into a full health and safety software company that focuses a lot around protecting the end worker. And with us, what we don't care about is whether that end worker is internal or external to the company that is using them, right? So we think of contractors and we think of full-time employees as one and the same, and that those people need to be protected at all times for all the types of work that they're doing there. And so we're going to spend a lot of time today talking about contractor management, but for us, at the end of the day, it's making sure that person that's doing work on site that may not be full-time employed by a company is being protected in the same way, is being verified in the same way that you would a normal employee. So let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we see with contractor management. First one, lack of standardized process. So one of the things that we see time and time again with our customers, whenever we're dealing with any hiring client, so a customer that actually sits there and employs the contractors within their business, is that they do not have, or they've started in a spot where they don't have a standard process. What they've typically done is they start off employing 10 contractors at one site, then all of a sudden they're working with 50 contractors and trying to manage them across multiple sites, then 100, then 500 contractors, on and on and on. Every single site starts to operate with a slightly different process than what they're used to. And that creates a challenge, right? You don't have a standard process, you don't have the ability to start to measure the effectiveness of the contractors coming on site, whether those contractors are working with the right insurance requirements, workman safety compensation requirements, right training, right materials, etc. It differs between each individual site. So it creates a big problem, and that problem starts to manifest itself into a lack of visibility. Now, one of the reasons why there's a lack of visibility is there's limited resources to help with the pre-qualification. Almost all of our customers start in this similar spot where they sit back and they say, well, I've got a health and safety manager or an ops director or someone like that that's doing this side of the desk. They've got Excel, they've got Word, they've got Google Docs, sometimes pen and paper, and they have very limited time to not only onboard contractors into their system, so they may take the documents, they may verify the documents the first time. They have even less time to revalidate when those insurance requirements, when the health and safety accreditation, when the training, all that type of stuff expires. They have even less time to make sure that they've gone back and validated that contractor is still okay and still safe to come to work. And so that limited resources really starts to come into a spot where the visibility gets lower and lower down the threshold, especially as you expand and grow your business. And that limited visibility plays itself into a challenge on reporting at a parent level. So when you start looking at your entire business, the one thing every customer wants, every single hiring customer is looking for, is the ability to look at these contractors and look at their full-time employees and start saying, how safe are we? Are the folks that are on the ground on our site, are they trained? Are they verified? Are they okay to do work? Will they be safe? Because we don't want any, not only do we not want them to get injured, we do not want any lost time due to that injury, and there's a financial burden that we all have to adhere to. And the final thing that they start to look at is if we can do the first three really well, so take it off of being a side of the desk effort, start to standardize those processes, and gain the reporting visibility, we can now manage our risk better, and our risk across everything. And that's what we really look for with how we start to think about contractors. So let's talk a little bit about root causes. The biggest one that we run into nonstop is a site manager typically allowing someone, a contractor, to come on site without validating that they have the right health and safety accreditation. Happens all the time. I know Joe. Jane was phenomenal at the last site. I don't care about the docs. And there's no system to track it. So because there's no system to track it, I'm doing it on Excel, I can quickly let them on site and let them do their work. Happens all the time, all the time. So having that mindset and stamping that out, it becomes a change management exercise within an organization. But if you don't have the right systems and tools to manage how your sites are operating, how they're managing their contractors, how they're validating that the only contractors that are on site are allowed to be there, you run into these type of situations all the time. Which we then start to see each site is operationalized, how they're managing who's allowed on and who's doing work through individual spreadsheets. And love Excel, use it all the time. Biggest challenge with Excel is I can't share information easily across multiple divisions, right? So I have one Excel for one site, I have another Excel for another site, I have a third Excel for a third site. All of a sudden you can start to see how fast this can steamroll, where every single site super or every single GM on different sites is going to have a challenge being able to effectively manage their contractors in an aggregate level. How do you know that the contractor that was at site A can't go to work at site B, especially if those sites aren't too far away? Instead, another site super hires a different contractor, even though the first contractor was fully verified at the other site. You have zero visibility. Excel becomes a bit of a nemesis in this case. And then the lack of visibility starts to manifest itself in making poor judgments and poor decisions around which contractors not only to employ inside of those sites, but which contractors to renew work with, because you don't have that shared knowledge. So when we start looking at the life cycle of the pre-qualification process, there is a couple of areas that we tend to focus on. The first is around health and safety documentation, and then the second is around client-specific documentation. Health and safety-specific documentation is really important. We think that every contractor management process should start and end in the same way that you manage health and safety for your internal employees. And so you can verify that a contractor is very much financially sound and all the normal stuff that you would look at. But if you are doing health and safety accreditation through policies and procedures, validating training records, validating that they're certified to use equipment, validating that they have the right trade certification licenses and things like that, and keeping them ongoing, you're creating a very strong, safe area for those contractors to work within your full-time employees and within your sites. Then we start to look at the client-specific documents, where those are the normal things that most hiring managers or hiring clients would be looking at, right? So if you come on site, you have the right insurance limits that we require. And those insurance limits need to change. If we're dealing with a lawn care contractor that's cutting our grass, we may need less than someone that is going up on a ladder and installing windows or something like that, right? So those type of things become really important. If you're dealing with hazardous materials or not. So do you have the right insurance verification? Do you have the right workman's comp verification? Do you have policy and financial stability? Financial stability is actually a really important one for a lot of customers. They don't want to see a contractor come on site, do work, something goes wrong, and then they can't work with that contractor ever again because they've gone bankrupt. Or they're just not paying their employees. And also you've got disgruntled contractors on site. So these things are very important when you're managing that process. We then take it from there and start looking at the risk management side. And when we're looking at the risk management side, what we're looking at is three things. The first one is around orientation onboarding. This should be no different than how you onboard an existing FTE on site. So if you were to employ someone and bring them on board and you would give them a toolbox talk or something similar to that and validate that they knew everything that was supposed to go on from an orientation standpoint, we believe contractors should be treated in the same way. Then we go from that into incident management. So a lot of companies spend a lot of time building a robust health and safety or incident management systems for their internal employees. We equally believe that every single contractor is just another human working on site that should be able to track and report on incidents or hazards or audits there live through the same type of tooling that your internal employees look at. It starts to create a blended work environment, even if they're only there for a couple of hours. And then the last thing we look at is around risk profiling. So if we can do this, where we actually have our contractors that are not only health and safety accredited, they're also verified across the right to work and they have all the right documentation around them. And we start to take it from a risk management standpoint where they're actually able to log into our systems and use it, we can really truly get into a spot where we're managing our end-to-end risk profile with leading and lagging indicators. So why is this pretty important? So what we're starting to notice a lot more over the last 3-4 years is a heightened sense of regulation bodies being very concerned not with the contractor that had an injury or an incident, but with the company that hired the contractor that had an incident on site. One of the most interesting ones for us was seeing Tesla's stock price drop by 2.7% because a worker got injured. That was shocking. We hadn't seen that before, where the market actually rebelled. Now, Tesla's pretty popular, so anything that happens there, when Elon tweets anything, something happens with that stock price, so I get it. But then you start looking at someone like Bacardi, who got fined over $190,000 because of a contractor getting injured on site. You look at project delays. If you're familiar with the London Crossrail project, one of the big reasons it got delayed by 12 months and $600 million in cost overruns was because of issues managing contractors and verifying that they had the right to work on site and underground. It was a big, big hit to them. And then the one that stuck out most to us, because we really work towards creating a safe work environment for all employees, regardless of whether they're contractor or an FTE. Contractors are likely to be injured 2 times more than an FTE within the same company doing the same job. That was shocking to us. And a large part of that we can piece together right now is because the way a company would typically track and validate that a contractor is actually safe and able to use the equipment that they're using is very different than how they would do the same thing for an FTE. So these things start to become interesting to us. We started asking questions of our customer base. And remember, we have a couple thousand hiring clients and then another 45,000 roughly contractors that we manage across our network. So we can get a good sense of what our customers are saying to us. And so we started looking at things around, okay, well, what's causing these challenges, right? Like when you're managing contractors, what's the biggest risk here? Where are you running into stumbling blocks? Where do you see challenges? Number one thing, they didn't know which contractors were performing simultaneous operations across sites. So they could have contractor A, phenomenal, at site A, and then have the exact same job being performed at site B a week later with another contractor that had not been verified, validated, or accredited to do the work. And they would have no idea that was happening, right? And you can actually see it on lack of visibility who is on site and unable to review contractor performance post-project. It was shocking. It was the same 3 things basically bucketed together. We just don't know what they're doing on site. And that's because the health and safety manager, typically who's managing these contractors, is stuck trying to process the documents in an office versus being able to go site to site and be in the field working with their workers, working with their site supers, coaching them, or having the tools available to them to do post-project reviews or during project reviews to validate that everyone that's there is able to work. So we start to get really concerned when we see these things because we know that the tooling exists to make this easy. It's just a matter of adopting it and working through it. And then recently, this happened this year, September 29th, there was a contractor worker who died of an electrocution at South Centre Mall in Calgary. Now, what we know is based on what happened at around 12:30 p.m., there was a massive electrocution, according to the Calgary Fire Department. The contractor died on site. We know that the OHS, the Occupational Health and Safety Board, is reviewing South Centre Mall for the cause of it, not the hiring contractor. So not the group that employed the contractor working on site. It's very interesting to us. We're seeing that time and time again across the US, across Canada, in the UK. Everywhere we look, we're starting to see that the boards are looking not at the employer, but who hired the contracting organization, regardless of the size or scope. So something just to keep in mind when you're looking at this. So I'm going to wrap it up and I'm going to send it over to Harish. A couple things to consider. First thing that we always look at is around scale. When we look at really our top customers that are really doing this right, the ones that have the lowest TRIF rating across everyone that's working on site, the ones that are managing their contractors well, they start to move to proactive. So they stop thinking to themselves, right, I need to make sure that it's working here and then it's working here or doing postmortems. They start to go, you know what, I'm going to start right off the bat, full scale. We're going to get these contractors into the system and we're going to manage them no different than how we'd manage an FTE. Really important mindset. Then they start looking at the training program that they put in place. Based on the type of work that a contractor is going to perform, they don't want to know that they have a $2 million limit of liability or insurance requirement. They want to know that contractor, not just the company, but the contractors coming on site, have actually done the training and have a training certificate that they can easily document, manage, and see that it's happened, validated that it's been renewed on time, and actually that they have the ability to do the work. So right people, right training. The third thing they look at is around getting safety right to the front line, especially in the hands of the site super. So the site super can actually see, right, Jane wants to come on site, check. She's been validated, she's been verified, she's been accredited, we're good. Joe wants to come on site, X. Nope, you're missing these documents. So they know right away who they're allowed on, who they're not allowed on. And starting to get tools into the hands of contractors that mirror what a hiring client would be using internally to manage their health and safety with their internal employees. So those contractors, they're there for an hour, they're there for a month, they can submit the same type of stuff from their phone without any issue. And then the last thing that we start to look at is around centralizing data and insights. So we are a big proponent that the only way that things change is through data-driven approaches. If you don't have visibility into the data, you're going to stumble and it's going to cause problems. And you'll be constantly looking at what we call lagging indicators, so things that have already occurred that you're able to analyze that have already occurred. The moment you have a fullness of data into your system, you're able to start looking at leading indicators, and by looking at leading indicators and getting into more predictive elements of safety, you're able to truly spot trends and deficiencies within your organization regardless of whether it's a contractor or an employee. So that's roughly what we look at and kind of some of the trends we're seeing within our customer base. I'm going to turn it over to Harish, who knows a ton about this space, and he will be able to walk you through a number of areas. Harish?
All right, so Tyler spoke a lot about the why we need to focus on contractor safety, what does it mean, so on and so forth. What I'm about to do is I'll share a few things about how we've helped a lot of our customers accomplish this throughout their ecosystem. I like to call it a simple 3-step process. I'll go through the 1, 2, 3 steps, and then we'll go through a couple of case studies and examples of real world scenarios of how customers have transformed their safety, health and safety within their organization. So to start off with, I'm just trying to find all right. So the first step is, even before you get on site, let's mitigate any risk that can possibly occur outside of your organization within the supply chain. We like to call this the contractor compliance wagon wheel. Essentially, the process really starts with pre-qualifying and centrally managing the contractor information. This is the simplest thing, but by far one of the most administrative processes which take up a lot of man hours and time from internal employees within an organization. Essentially gathering information about all of these contractors. They won't pick up the phone call, chasing them, getting the information documented in a fashion that is easily accessible, and having custom notifications and workflows to show who's at what parts of stages. Once you have all the information and to ensure that the contractors are compliant, we look at safety accreditation. This is just taking it a step further, like Tyler explained, having those specific questionnaires filled out and vetted against their qualification criteria. And it's very important to know that some of that may vary from site to site, from organization to organization, based on the complexity of their needs. If you are a electrical general contractor who have a lot of high voltage activity, the kind of requirements that you would be demanding from your subcontractor is vastly different from a general construction company who will be hiring construction contractors and tradesmen. A part of the solution offering is just not to have a review of the documentation, but to look at it more qualitatively, having them reviewed by proper health and safety professionals to see if the health and safety program and their policies and procedures actually hold good and they are compliant with legislative requirements. Having their quality processes vetted by a CRSP to see if they're actually being followed to the spec, which will make them safe on site. Once you have these two parts, essentially you're working with a pool of contractors who are proven or vetted by professionals to be safe and to be qualified to perform a job. A part of that can come from your own contractor list that you bring, but there's also 40,000 contractors who have gone through these processes within our system to see various levels of accreditations and compliances that you can pull from. The very next step, great, you have all of these contractors, but if you cannot have that information handy when you need it, when a job comes up for the right skill set, it becomes a moot point. A key part of having a complete contractor management is having accessibility to the data, to that list of contractors, so that you can pull up a job tomorrow and say that for this particular job, I need 10 contractors with this particular skill sets, high voltage, grade, permitted to work underground, permitted to work out on energized equipment with lockout, tagout capabilities, to be able to pull out that list of contractors, find where they are geolocated near yourself, and start to move through that project quickly starts to become really, really critical. All of these stuff is kind of the things that you do before you get somebody onto site. Once you start getting them onto site, reporting visibility starts to become really important. getting all contractors' data managed holistically and systematically to see which qualifications and which criteria are actually having a better impact on safety performance on site starts to play a key role. Once we go all of this, then comes the ongoing service support from the organization itself, because contractor qualification accreditation is not a point-in-time solution. You get them started once, but eventually, as the organization grows, as the years go by, you need to qualify them and accredit them over different periods of time for different skill set at various different frequencies to match your business needs, so that throughout the life cycle of the engagement with the contractor, you're able to ensure that they're compliant with your needs. Now that, step one, essentially helps you to mitigate the risks that might be directly outside of your control. In other words, things that are happening outside of your site. Ensure that they're compliant, ensure they have the right policies and procedures, ensure that they have the right training at the time you want and when you want it. Once that's done, let's come on site. We have about 100,000 users using our health and safety platform for employee safety. One of the biggest learnings that we've gotten over the years analyzing all of this data is that safety happens at the front lines. If your frontline workers, regardless of their employees or contractors, are not participating in safety activities, your safety is theoretical and it's only on paper. It's good for CYA purposes, but it's not actually making anybody any safer. Essentially, you're still exposed to the risk that can be materialized at any point of time. The real ways to get safety on site is to get people embedded and bought into the safety culture and start to do their safety activities. Some of the most trivial things are the most biggest ones, like on-site onboarding and orientation. A good example is an employee working on a job site or a building knows that the southwest entrance during freezing conditions is always slippery. But a contractor who comes there once in 2 weeks will not know that. Having that information, site-specific information, provided to them in an orientation format, and ensure that they have gone through it, they have read through it, and they have acknowledged it even before they get onto the site is important. Once you're onto the site, one of the most biggest processes that give a lot of benefit is the safety meetings and toolbox talks. Again, gathering your contractors and employees on a specific predefined frequency to talk about the safety conditions of the site, and the topics and the risks and hazards that are specifically present at that day or at that particular job, absolutely important. Going on to inspections and safety observations. Inspections, ad hoc observations are one of the most important things to identify hazards that are around a site. Our research analysis from 2019 actually showed that over 60% of the hazards in a site never get logged because it's administratively heavy. Contractors and employees don't see any value in it. They have to take time out from doing their job to go and do it. And lastly, even if they report it, there's no reaction to it. Nobody cares. It's just a system. It's a piece of paper that's gone in somewhere. An important part of getting safety right is making it really simple and easy for people to log those information and having absolute transparency. We'll talk about how to build transparency in a bit. On showing the employees and contractors that there was a hazard that was logged, it's been notified, somebody has rectified it, and everybody's aware that that has happened in a very specific period of time. And lastly, incident reporting, 100%. Again, without saying it goes like, if a contractor or an employee got a slight bruise, usually they don't report it unless and until they have to get medical assistance, either to see a nurse or a doctor, and various reasons for it. Again, taking time out, cultural stigma within the job site, a lot of paperwork, so on and so forth, and essentially comes down to people not seeing value in it. By creating transparency and creating value throughout the system, it actually builds in more and more safety on the front lines. Once you've got all of your employees and contractors doing health and safety activities on a day-to-day basis through the system, next comes reporting. Because essentially, if you have all the information in the system, and if you have a pre-qualified contractor base, that's step one, and step two sets you up to operate efficiently. The efficient operation of creating a health and safety culture comes through looking at the data, looking at the leading indicators, looking at the contributing factors for the safety, and optimizing them on an ongoing basis. And that really is the job of a health and safety professional, not helping people log information in an Excel sheet or or track documents from contractor complaints. Those things should be automated, like systems that we provide. Like the real job comes down to understanding the health and safety indicators and optimizing that. To the extent that you can actually take a contractor, look at what they've done in the past in terms of jobs, how safe those jobs have been, and how that has contributed towards the overall project success and failure. An important aspect of this is just because an incident hasn't happened is not proof that a job is safe or a site is safe. A lack of incident or a lack of proof is just risk that has not been materialized. How to quantify that risk truly comes by understanding the leading indicators and the factors that are contributing towards the job sites through correlation analysis of past data, looking at the various types of observations that have been done, near misses and hazards that have been reported. Really comes down to understanding safety from a data perspective, an empirical perspective, so that you can influence the front lines. You can almost look at it from these three-step process from the reverse way. The ultimate end goal for an organization is to keep its employees safe and contractors safe, because it has top line and bottom line impact on having good reputation in the market and minimizing the risk and CYA purpose. In order to do that, the single biggest proof point is your incident rate over 200,000 employee man hours, TRIF or TRAR, and the second ones are your leading indicators. In order to get that, you want to get systems in place to capture the data, and then you want to have their contractors accredited from a perspective. So those are the three-step process that we'd like to call for total contractor management and health and safety within an organization. What I'll do now is quickly take up a couple of examples. Probably we'll dive deep into one specific example of a customer who's gone through this process with us, what their challenges were, and how we were able to transform their health and safety and what are the outcomes of it. One of the customers, Triovis, a very well-known property management organization in Toronto, in Canada, specifically, they use us for our pre-qualification and accreditation process. One of the key outcomes that they were able to benefit through this process is operational efficiency. The amount of man hours that we were able to reduce from a pre-qualification and accreditation and gathering their contractor requirements was incredible. It was an interesting case because Triovis had a lot of specific requirements that were unique to them outside of all other organizations' questionnaires that are in an accreditation process. And we were able to create our system to be flexible enough to accommodate those questions so that they were specific to the clients and they were able to accomplish those accreditation results. Another one that will probably dive a little bit deeper is about KLine. I'm going to have to read through my notes because I don't want to misspell their names here. So KLine is a perfect example of how an organization transformed and a traditional health and safety process from a contractor and employee management perspective into a modern day system. To talk a little bit about KLine, KLine is a high voltage solution services provider of construction from start to finish. They're a group of companies comprised of KLine Maintenance and Construction, KLine Electro Services, KLine Insulators, and KLine International. They're one of the largest utility subcontractors in Canada. And we've worked with KLine Construction over the last couple of years. And what they do is they provide turnkey solutions to design, construct, and maintain facilities, high utility facilities, utility lines, and underground power lines. One of the things that really resonated with us at the onset of the relationship with KLine was very committed to safety, not just because they're good people, because it has a tangible impact for their business. They're working in a very highly hazardous environment where there is high voltage risk involved on every job site. And one of the biggest reasons they're well known for what they do is because their clients trust them for those activities to happen safe so that there is no incident in their site and lead to examples like Tyler gave on the Calgary Mall. So they were very, very focused on having safety not as a compliance activity, but as a tool to promote their business and as proof point for their clients to believe in them. The interesting challenge that KLine faced was a good challenge. Their business was growing, and it was growing rapidly, which stress tested their current health and safety process of managing things on an Excel sheet. So they were growing at a rate, at a very fast rate. They had more than 100 contractors. The accreditation pre-qualification was done on pen and paper, on Excel sheets. All the on-site health and safety activities were performed on Excel sheets, which created a couple of really big pain points, which was the first one was inconsistency. The data that's captured between sites, between contractors, between employees was inconsistent. To normalize the data and consume it to make any effective decision was a challenge. The second thing was the amount of time it requires to take the data, process the data, understand what's going on. You have already let a lot of time for that particular risk to exist within the system even before you knew it. That was the biggest exposure. Even before you could understand the hazards within your different sites and what it contributes, days have gone by and that hazard has existed in various different forms, and we haven't learned from it and we haven't acted on it. But KLine knew this already. So they went on a search for health and safety management and contractor accreditation system that could solve for all of their problems. The first time, they actually went with another organization. I will name them. They started off their journey with them. They went through their health and safety processes and their accreditation process, and quickly they identified that the solution was not the right for them because they came across a few main challenges, all relating to the specifics that we spoke about. First thing, safety is at the front lines. If your frontline end users are not participating in safety, you're not getting in any insightful data to manage the safety aspects. The user friendliness of the solutions out there started to become a big pain point, because if the application in itself is not mind-numbingly simple and easy to use like a WhatsApp application, and you have to train users and you have to educate them on how to use it, you're losing buy-in. Not because they don't know how to use it, because frontline workers don't have the time. They are on the clock to do their job and move on to the next job. Everything that they need to do from a health and safety aspect has to be really, really intuitive. Second thing is robust reporting. Now, most organizations, most solutions have reporting as either a fixed reporting system or a reporting system that needs to be worked by a BI consultant through Power BI or some other reporting mechanism, which creates, again, challenges because in order to consume the data effectively, you're adding in lead time and complexities within your processes. And lastly, contractor management, the entire process of having clear visibility into the contractors that are coming into your organization, into your job sites, into your projects, and to see at what stage of qualification and accreditation they are in. What they wanted to do is that the ability to do all of this in one coherent ecosystem, and that's exactly what we provide through our solution system. So they consumed our contractor management solution system and our health and safety management solutions to accomplish the entire transformation and bring their entire process digital. The biggest highlights on what made them successful was our mobile offering. All the activities from the perspective of a contractor doing a on-site orientation or having a training being taken online and being certified on it, reporting a hazard, performing an inspection, or reporting an incident. All of these things happen within their native mobile app, wherever they are, and they can have access to it even before they come to the site to perform those activities. And when they see mobile app, it vastly changes the experience because it's simple. You can do it anytime, and you can do it at your convenience, and you can do it in your own device. That was one of the biggest barriers that we could do to unblock the frontline participation of contractors and employees. The second one, the benefit of having that is real-time communication. Now, you don't have to wait for days or weeks to consume the data. Every time an incident happens, you know it right away. Within 10-15 minutes, you can have a whole crew out to take care of action of it. You can learn from it, and you can adapt to your situation. This helps into more clear visibility into the hazards that are occurring within your sites and within your properties at any point of time, so that you can be proactive and mitigate them. That was the real outcome for them. From an operational processes perspective, they were able to save about 3 to 4 full-time employees spending their time on doing manual processes to input data and collate data. The real-time flow of information created such transparency that every piece of information that came in from an incident to an hazard perspective can be consumed and responded within 15 minutes so that that situation has been avoided, which essentially changed the nature of job for the health and safety professionals. They're not doing any more administrative work for inputting information in an Excel sheet or gathering them in reports. They're actually doing qualitative work on figuring out how to make their sites better. And that's essentially what we are trying to do. We're trying to automate all of these manual processes, make it intuitive, make it self-sufficient, so that people on the front lines are able to participate in it and contribute towards it. The health and safety managers and directors are able to focus on how they can improve the program, and business as a whole is able to benefit from providing that confidence to the clients and the properties that they manage, that they're a safe organization, they're a reliable organization, and at the end of the day, there's a bottom line cost avoidance towards it from fines and regulatory activities. Those are essentially the common themes that we see. Frontline participation, everything towards frontline safety, end-to-end contractor management, and the importance of data. And Tyler alluded to a little bit earlier, the involvement of customers in the data side of things is just increasing on a day-to-day basis. We are seeing customers getting more and more handsy with the data and creating their own reports and dashboards, and even using them to drive workflows within their sites to see the hazards that are outstanding and so on and so forth. We're also embarked in the journey of doing machine learning and AI on that to predict the safety of an organization, a site, and an individual, which we are actually going to beta sometime earlier in the first half of next year. So some exciting news to come. Hopefully that was useful. That's the three-step process that we've used to transform KLine's safety journey, and that we've continued to do for various other organizations. We are at booth number 609. If you'd like to learn more, we can have more conversations in depth about there. And we're also happy to take any questions from myself and Tyler at this point.